sometimes saying yes to a loan is the worst thing you can possibly do for somebody. If the financial numbers don't make sense, it's just a hobby. It's not a business. A good accountant is absolutely vital. Okay. A good accountant is probably the single most critical thing, I think, for a small business, because not only can they advise you and help you to make sure that you're doing everything the correct way and taxes and all that, but being able to understand what's happening in your business.
Good morning. Welcome to season 3 of the Spotlight podcast. My name is Courtney Butler, and I am the chamber manager for the Greater Kokomo Alliance.
I'm Caitlin Sheets. I'm the economic development manager for the Greater Kokomo Alliance. And today we have Bob Hickman from Community First Bank. Bob is the chief banking and credit officer. And I will give you an opportunity to introduce yourself.
Sure.
And your role at the bank, and kind of your history there, maybe how you got to where you are now.
Great. Thanks, Caitlin. Yeah, my latest title is Chief Banking and Credit Officer. I've had about 15 titles throughout my career. So I originally was part of the founding group that started the bank. And so Mike Stiegel was the driving force that kind of got the bank going 24 years ago, and recruited Rob Bloom, myself, and a few others to get it off the ground. So I've worn a few hats over the years, but I've always been involved in the lending area of the bank, either from an underwriting side or a actual loan officer side. So that's kind of been my focus.
Okay. So if we look back at history of the bank, what's kind of changed, or what does your day-to-day look like now compared to what it did 24 years ago?
A lot's changed, actually. When we first started out, we were just a small community bank, and that's all we ever really aspired to be, was just, okay, we're just going to be Kokomo's bank. That was what our dream was.
Sure.
And ultimately, we've gone from one location to 9 or 10 locations now, branched out into Hamilton County and beyond. It's grown from 16 employees originally to about 150 or so now.
Wow.
So it's kind of become a much bigger thing than we all ever anticipated it would be. But you just kind of grab hold and go for the ride and try to remember what got you there and keep acting like a small bank even as you become a bigger bank. And that's kind of where we're at.
Definitely.
So your role has changed a lot, and you said so a little bit of underwriting and small business loans and things. So what does that look like for a small business looking to apply for a loan, and maybe some business planning within that too?
Sure, absolutely. So originally, my role at the bank, I was the loan officer for basically all the loans. And so anybody that was looking to apply for a business loan I'd be the first stop. As time has evolved, we've added lenders, we've added people in different roles, but ultimately, still one of my favorite things to do is to help a small business get launched and get off the ground. And it was kind of coincidental when we started our bank. It was a period of time kind of in that early 2000s, early to 2003 to 2007, 2008, where a lot of things were changing and a lot of entrepreneurs were getting started. I think Inventrek maybe had not been around for too long prior to that as a business incubator.
Absolutely.
And a lot of our early clients were also clients of Inventrek who were trying to launch a business, came to us, said, "Hey, we're looking for capital.
Awesome.
We're going to be in this business incubator." But many of these people started out small and have become staples of the community, have become much bigger. And it all really starts out with an idea and a plan. And business planning is something, I know we plan to talk about business plans today quite a bit. That's really kind of the first step. Is to be able to generate a business plan. And people often misunderstand it and say, okay, I've got to do this business plan for my banker. And that's not really true. You're doing the business plan for you.
Right.
And that's the thing that people need to remember, is that business plan is really what informs them and tells them, hey, I've either got a viable thing here, or, ooh, I didn't think about that. I didn't factor that in. And so any business really should start out with a business plan.
Hi, I'm Rob from Community First Bank of Indiana. We hope you're enjoying the episode so far. We certainly are. We know that running a business means juggling a lot. As you're listening today, here's a question you might want to ask. What to do if your banker says no? Well, first, please don't take it personally. There are no bankers that enjoy saying no. Banks don't make money unless we make loans. So we'll do everything we can to try and help expedite your process. The second thing is make sure you ask questions and understand why you got to know, or if there's a path forward. You might be able to add collateral, a guarantor, or find another structure that works to help your banker say yes. In the end, if you're walking out of a meeting where your banker has told you no, you ought to have a plan to move forward to turn that no into a yes. Thanks for letting us jump in and be a part of the conversation. If you ever want to chat or need help working through options, our team is here. All right, we'll let you get back to the main interview. Community First Bank of Indiana is a member of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation.
So I'll say first, before I ask you a follow-up question, we did our first episode of the Spotlight Podcast, Season 3, with Rob Bloom, who's the president and CEO of the bank. So I'll point at the camera. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to that episode. But Rob does a really great job of speaking to the culture of the bank.
Sure.
And what it looks like maybe if you walk into Community First Bank as opposed to, you know, a larger, more corporate style bank.
Sure.
As a small business owner, you're looking for funding, you're looking for help. And I say that to ask, what does it look like if someone comes in with an idea or a business they're trying to get off the ground? How does a banker at Community First Bank approach that and help them?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'll piggyback a little bit off of what Rob said to lead into my answer to that question. I'm sure that when he was talking, some of the differences that he drew the comparison to is, for example, most big banks won't even talk to a small business entrepreneur. So if you're trying to launch a business and you walk in and sit down with a larger bank and I want to talk to a loan officer, and you sit down and they say, well, do you have 2 years of historical operations? And they say, no, I'm trying to start a business. And the answer is, well, come back to us in 2 years. Right. When a business owner comes to Community First Bank and sits down, usually it can range from they're already in business and they're getting to the point where they just need some capital, to sometimes it's simply an idea on a piece of paper. But they're looking for someone they can talk to try to understand what the obstacles are, what the hurdles are. Maybe they think they understand what the hurdles are and they know they need some capital to help them get over those hurdles. Sometimes it's simply, hey, I've got an idea. What do you think? It's kind of an advisory thing. Mm-hmm. And, you sit down with them and you talk through it and you use your experience to maybe point out, potential. Have you thought about this issue? Have you thought about that issue? And then ultimately where it's leading, though, is a business relationship. And sometimes it can be a deposit account relationship, and that's all they really need. But many times it's, hey, we need capital. We're not sure how it should look. We're not sure whether we need a credit line or a term loan or what exactly we need. And we're not sure how much we need. And so it's our job as bankers to sit down with them, understand their business, put it into the language of finance, and then help give them the best solution to be able to help them be successful.
Right. So business plans.
Yes.
Dreaded for a lot of people.
Yeah. And dreaded for me when they're the size of a telephone book.
Yeah.
Just bring me a nice little concise business plan.
That's a good point. We at the Alliance, we lead the Drive competition, a business pitch competition every year. Obviously, You're familiar. You've been one of our 3 judges.
A lot of fun. I look forward to it every year.
It's
great
so
event.
much fun. And what I really am proud of in the preparation for the Drive competition is that Lori and I, and our Alliance staff, we lead the 3 finalists through several months of preparation. And we help them. 9 times out of 10, they don't have a business plan. They've never even thought about or seen a business plan. They don't have any experience with it. But what does a business plan look like?
Well, it can look like a lot of different things, but I'll try to give my viewpoint as to what I think it should look like and what your banker probably thinks it should look like. But first of all, yes, I wanted to piggyback off what you said about the Drive competition. For those of you not familiar with the Drive, it's kind of like a Shark Tank type situation where people are basically making their business pitch. Mm-hmm. And I believe the funding organization is Cicada, or is it the
So we secure sponsorships
sponsorships?
from local businesses in the community
Gotcha.
to amount to $10,000, and
Mhm.
then you and the other two judges,
Right.
obviously you
Right.
choose the winner at the end, and then we cut them a check. Literally, we can do it the next day for $10,000. There's nothing quite like it in the state. It's, one of few programs where you can really be, next day you have the funding you need to scale up.
I really enjoy being. I kind of feel like I'm more Mark Cuban than I am Mr. Wonderful, but I do really enjoy being part of that. And we've had some wonderful businesses that have been launched that have helped. A lot of them have already gotten their start, but they've taken the next step because of those funds from the drive. So if you get a chance, guys, I recommend you attend it this fall when you see the notice of it. It's a lot of fun. It's a neat event.
So we're getting started with the 3 finalists now. And when they look at, Lori and I always try to say, kind of echo exactly what you said. You're not making the business plan for the bank or for the pitch competition, really. And you also don't have to stick to exactly what you put in the business plan. It's for you. It's a living document. You can change it at any time. And it doesn't have to look like, 300 pages of 12-point font. And what are some of the best business plans? How do you do it successfully?
Sure. So getting back to this topic of business plans. So really, you can go out, excuse me, you can go out and Google, what are the components of a business plan? And there are basic things: an executive summary, description of management, market analysis. I mean, there are certain, you can get the framework of what your business plan should look like. But at the end of the day, a business plan is, go back to 3rd grade. Who, what, when, where, why, how. I mean, that's really the questions that you're trying to ask and answer in your business plan. And so you're trying to explain, who you are, what your business is, how you're going to do it, when you're going to do it, where you're going to do it, and why. I mean, those are basically the questions you're answering. And by answering those questions, you oftentimes find yourself thinking, okay, I thought the business was going to look like this, but now that I've answered the question, I think it should look like this. And you mentioned the changes. Oftentimes, a business plan will create changes in your business once you've really analyzed it and looked at it.
Right.
And the key thing you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out where your competitive advantage is. Okay. So for a business to be successful, whether it's a for-profit, a nonprofit business, you have to have a niche. You have to have something that differentiates you and is your competitive advantage. And it can be in any one of those, answering any one of those questions, you might find that advantage, right? So, let's give some examples. When you're talking about, say, an example of a competitive advantage based on when, the question when, think about the 24-hour gyms that came along, right? They're a gym just like any other gym. So how do they differentiate themselves? How do they find a market niche? How do they be successful? In their business plan, they said, hey, we're going to be open 24 hours. That's their niche. That's their success. You could go any one of those questions, you could find examples of it. Where, anytime you see a business where they come to you, or an example like DoorDash, great example of that. Somebody wrote a business plan for DoorDash and they said, hey, our competitive advantage is we're bringing the food to you, right? So really what you're doing is you're completing each section of the business plan. You're keeping it succinct. And again, you want it readable. You want it to be fully explained, but you don't want to just fluff it like someone writing a high school report that's got to get to so many pages. Right. You want to say what you're trying to say. You want to say it fully and completely, but that's all you need to put in there, right? And as you're completing each one of these sections, as long as you're addressing the who, what, when, where, why, and how, you've done a complete business plan with one caveat. A very important piece of a business plan is your financial projections, okay? And so ultimately what you're trying to do is you're trying to not only make sure you as the owner are writing a plan that's viable, that you have a viable business, but you're also oftentimes trying to convince the investor, the bank, someone that you're showing the business plan to, that you're worthy of their investment and that you have a viable business, right? So if you don't have financial projections, those are like the proof of a math problem. Those are, you've laid it all out, you've told your story problem, and now you have to prove it in numbers, okay? If you don't have the financial projections well fleshed out, it's a hobby plan. It's not a business plan. It's hey, I want to do this, I will enjoy doing this, I can provide this. But if the financial numbers don't make sense, it's just a hobby. It's not a business.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, like I said, we lead people through this process. Financial projections are most definitely the hardest component of a business plan to get people to even kind of face it. Like they
Right.
almost feel like, if we don't look at it, then it's not there. How do people start? If you don't have any experience with that, it's a learning curve.
It is. It's a language, and I know there are a lot of resources, and we talk about the in Indiana Statewide
BDC,
ISBDC.
Small Business
Thank you.
Development Center. Yeah.
Yep, Small Business Development Center. There's some great people that are affiliated with that. People go to them for advice on writing business plans, financial projections.
Yep.
They're a great resource. A banker can be a good resource as well. People with accounting background can be a good resource, but you really do have to learn that language. You have to understand what a profit and loss looks like.
Mm-hmm.
You have to understand what an income statement looks like, and a balance sheet for that matter. And you may say, well, but my business is X. My business is making candles, or my business is, doing dog grooming.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever your business might be, at the end of the day, you're not an accountant, but you still have to understand the language of accountant, because it's the language of money and it's the language of business. So you still have to be able to kind of understand those basics. So, use some of these resources and figure out, you can do your own research as well too. Understand the basics of a profit and loss. This is my revenue. This is the money I'm going to be taking in. This is the cost of the materials and the labor that's going to go out to generate this revenue. These are my other expenses, and then ultimately this is my profit at the end. That's really what a P&L or an income statement is about. And when you think about it in terms of, instead of technical terms, when you just think about it as, what's coming in and what's going out, you have to be able to show that and be able to make the math at the end in order for it to make sense,
Mm-hmm.
right? I teach a class every year, so there is a program that I would hope more people know about this, but there's a great program in Kokomo called the CEO program.
Yeah.
And it is a wonderful entrepreneurial program where we have local high school kids, usually seniors, through the schools. They take part in this program, and they spend the entire senior year, 2 hours every day, going out and visiting businesses, seeing how business works and runs. They do their own small business, each of them individually, as well as a class business, and put on a trade show. It's really a wonderful program. But as part of this, they're just like the entrepreneur. They have to learn how to do a business plan. And invariably, the thing that we struggle with the most when they're doing their plans is what you mentioned, the financial projections, because it's a language that they're just not used to.
Right.
And, you need to lean on whatever resources you can to help you understand what financial statements look like. And then the other piece of the puzzle that is really important to remember is projections. Okay, you can put numbers on paper, but they're just numbers unless you really show your assumptions and validate those assumptions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I want to start a restaurant. And I say, okay, bring me your business plan, do your projections. They bring me their projections, and they come in and they show me a profit and loss, and they say, my sales are going to be $500,000 a year. But that's all they show me. And then, so we start talking about it, and we say, okay, well, how did you get that number? Well, what you don't want to hear is, well, that just kind of felt like the right number. That's usually not a good way to start out.
Right.
But what you'll often hear is you'll have somebody say, well, I plan to be open for breakfast and lunch, and I think I can do an average of 50 diners per 50 tables per meal, and I'll be open 6 days a week, and my average ticket is $10. And so they'll explain all that to you, and then it'll make perfect sense. But then my response to them is, well, then you got to put that in your business plan. right? Because, show your assumptions to your projections so that I, as a reader, can understand and put value in those projections and say, okay, that makes a lot of sense to me. And really, that's one of the key hurdles that they have to overcome.
Yeah.
So you've talked a lot about mentors and the resources that Kokomo and
Sure.
Howard County have. So then when they get their business plan, they might have their loan. They obviously may be opening a storefront or getting things started with those funding. Do you have some key pieces of advice that you've learned along the way or that you've heard from other businesses or given yourself for someone that might be starting their own business?
One of the things that I think is really important is for each, no matter how big or small your business is, I would call it your personal board of directors. It's very important that you surround yourself with good people. That you find someone that you can rely on to do accounting, find someone in the legal profession that can prepare the corporation documents and things like that for you. Find a good banker, somebody that you can talk to, that you can lean on for advice. And then, it might vary beyond that. There might be other people that are part of your personal board of directors, maybe a mentor, somebody else who's been successful in business, somebody else who is in your industry perhaps. But until you fall in the trap, you aren't going to recognize it unless somebody points out ahead of you and says, don't fall in that trap, right? And so invariably, no matter what business you're in, you're going to make mistakes. And it's going to be probably in an area that you're not familiar with. So many times a small business owner will, let's say that they do, wood carvings or something, and they've been doing it for years, and now they're going to open their own storefront up and they're going to go into business. And, 6 months in, they go, oh, I didn't understand about paying sales tax, or I didn't understand how payroll taxes work. And they get themselves into a hole because they didn't surround themselves with people that could give them advice and point out where the pitfalls are.
Yeah.
So surround yourself with good people. That's always the best advice.
And that's, true in any aspect of life, whether you're a business owner or, you work for a corporation. We need, as humans, we need that aspect of community. You need to learn from people. You can't be the smartest person in the room. It's important that we have other people to learn from. Have you seen, and I'm sure that you have you seen business owners fail because they don't want help, or maybe they think that they can do it all themselves?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely, for sure. And sometimes it's they literally do fail and the business goes out of business. And sometimes they just struggle for a long time until they kind of figure that out, until they figure out that they need to, or until they make all the mistakes and learn all the lessons themselves. And then, but they certainly make the path harder on them. And, even within our bank, we have, we are entrepreneurs ourselves, because we started the bank as entrepreneurs. The people there originally, worked with Mike Stiegel to raise money in the community, to get people to invest, to start a bank. But we all have our own personal boards of directors. We have people within our bank. We may be working for a company, but we surround ourselves with people that we trust that can help us, as we go through our day-to-day jobs.
Yeah. What other types of experts do people need, and which ones do you think are really worth the investment to go hire somebody or pay somebody to do a service for your business?
Well, I think the most important, as you grow, that changes, right? So what I see oftentimes is, and I'll take the question a little differently. What do you need within your business to successfully grow, right? So you can start out as a small business, and a good accountant is absolutely vital, okay? A good accountant is probably the single most critical thing, I think, for a small business, because not only can they advise you and help you to make sure that you're doing everything the correct way and taxes and all that, but being able to understand what's happening in your business. You're in it every day. You're in it up to your ears, but yet sometimes it takes somebody actually translating it into the language of numbers to be able to say, oh wow, this product, I'm losing money on every one of these I sell. I didn't even realize that when you put all the costs together. So not only does it help you inform and run your business correctly and do it and make the changes you need to make, but it keeps you out of trouble, it keeps your business successful, and it helps you. I can't tell you how many times a small business comes to a bank and they know that they need help. They know that they've got a hurdle. Maybe they've just taken on a big customer and it's great, but that customer doesn't pay for 90 days. So what do I do now? I've got to spend all this money on materials and labor, and I'm not going to get the money back for a while, but it's a great customer. I don't want to lose it. So, those are the kind of problems, those are good problems to have. And those are the kind of problems you want to go to the bank with and say, hey, I want a line of credit and here's how I'm going to pay it back. And, it's a good problem. But these people come to the bank and they've never had an accountant, and they don't know how to show what their business is truly doing. Yeah. And so they come with what they call their financials, and you're kind of twisting it this way and that, and you're trying to make it make sense. And you've just made your job so much harder to get the capital you need to make your business grow. Mm-hmm. So an accountant, to me, number one, that is like head and shoulders above anything else. What I was going to say about the transition of your business is that at some point, a business needs that function internally. And that's one of the real struggles with the businesses that have been successful and grow. Let's say you started out as 2 or 3 people and now you've got 20 or 30 employees. An internal controller, an internal CFO, those are high paying positions typically for a company. And those are usually, they're not revenue generating. So companies are very slow to do that. Well, I've got a good accountant, but when you get to a certain size, it's critical that you have that day-to-day information to manage off of. And you can't do that when your accountant's giving you a statement once a month. Right. So to me, it's about the numbers. The numbers are the most important thing.
Definitely. And I heard you, I think about something that you said during our last drive competition quite a bit, and it's maybe changed the way that I've thought about how we will approach this year and coming years. During the competition, or maybe just after, you said something about how the $10,000 that the winner gets, they can use that to leverage for like another financial asset. How can people use small or comparatively small amounts of money to level up or scale their business forward in a way larger capacity?
That's a good question. I think one of the things that we look at when we're judging the drive competition is how meaningful is this money going to be for this company? How much of a difference can it make, right? And I also I'm involved pretty heavily in the community foundation here locally, and some other organizations that can get involved in giving grants to organizations, nonprofits, things like that. And so typically, a small business will come and say, hey, I want to borrow X amount of money to do this. And, same thing might happen on a grant. Let's say a nonprofit will come and say, hey, I want to do this thing with this money, and I'd like X amount of money. So, sometimes you can borrow money just to pay expenses, right? And at the end of the day, when those expenses are paid, the money's gone. Mm-hmm. So let's say someone comes and says, hey, I want to borrow $10,000 and I'm going to use it to pay rent and payroll for 3 months. Well, we might approve that loan, if we look at all the other factors and it makes sense. And at the end of the day, this is what they need to kind of get over the hump and get up and running. But let's say that same person comes and says, I want to borrow $10,000 to buy a machine. And with that machine, I can do things 4 times faster, and I can improve my productivity 4 times, and I can sell 4 times as much product. Mm-hmm. So you look at a situation like that versus where the money's just going to get spent and gone. And that's, what we talk about in terms of trying to leverage the money. It's right. Like sometimes just a little bit of funding is what it takes to really make things take off and explode.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about some of those resources, and you talked a little bit about, so obviously small business loans, but there's small business grants out there.
Sure.
We've talked about the Indiana Small Business Development Center. Obviously, the drive competition, there's lots of things within our economic development division, but are there any other resources that come to mind that businesses could look for?
Well, There are, but a lot of these things are very specialized. Like, for example, the Federal Home Loan Bank in Indiana does what they call AHP grants. And those AHP grants can be up to $500,000, $1 million. They can be used by local organizations. Many of the nonprofits here in Central Indiana have used those kind of grants before, and you can combine those with bank money. And you can then in turn do a project, like a housing project, something like that. So there are grant funds available to businesses for specific type of things. There are storefront grants, things like that. There are also a wide variety of loan type products that may not be your typical bank loan. For example, there are certain the city of Kokomo has a loan program. It's called the revolving loan fund.
Yes.
And not a lot of people know about this.
I wish more people knew about it.
I wish they did too. They've got money to lend, and it is typically done at a much lower than market interest rate. There's a variety of purposes. I would highly recommend small businesses that are looking for capital, reach out to the City of Kokomo Development Department, ask them about the revolving loan fund.
Yep.
And, you might be able to apply for that and get a very low interest loan to go along with, say, your bank financing.
So a component of securing a revolving loan, getting money from the revolving loan fund, is that you have to kind of give a presentation.
Sure.
That, similar to the drive, holds a lot of people back. What can you say to someone who really is in need, but they're scared of having to speak their business plan or give a pitch in order to get there?
That's tough, because it's really about overcoming your fears, right? I mean, we all have to, try getting me on a roller coaster. It's probably not going to happen, but I've done it before, and I just had to overcome my fears. One of the people that's really cherished in my life and in the bank's life, a gentleman who had passed away, unfortunately, a year and a half ago or so, Bill Hinkst. Bill was our original chairman of the board of the bank, and I know he was obviously, people in the community know Bill very well. He was very charitable, very giving, very humble, just an outstanding person. And Bill's kryptonite was public speaking, and he dreaded every year he had to do the opening speech at our annual meeting. And I think it was the worst day of his year. And, and a lot of people are like Bill. A lot of us are like that. I call myself an extroverted introvert. I'll sit here and talk to you all day, but when I go home, I'm buried in a book, and I'm not wanting to talk to anybody. Right. I feel like it may feel like a challenge, and it may feel scary, but I can't say that I have great advice other than just do it, just jump in and do it. I mean, you have to be willing, if you believe in yourself and you believe in your business, forget about the people in front of you, forget about being on a stage or in front of a boardroom or whatever it might be. You just have to get up there and talk about what you believe in and talk about what you know. And it'll work. It'll work out. You'll be able to, if you believe in something, you can overcome your fears, but you have to do it. You just have to get up there and talk.
We always say that sales, like, you might be selling a product, but when you believe in what you're doing and you think about you forget about all that external stuff, and it's really hard. You can do it, you can sell it. And sometimes that's just that beginning leap, and then you get that extra confidence. So, and who doesn't love free money sometimes, especially with those grants? And so a presentation and a pitch for 10 minutes can give you 10 years.
Definitely.
And that's probably what you guys see a lot with the drive people, right? With the entrepreneurs that come in, they're probably just a little bit concerned about getting up there. And yeah, definitely.
But we've never had one person go through the drive competition who at the end regrets it.
Right.
It's always, even if they don't win, they get to the end of it and they do the presentation, and that's a skill, that's a muscle that you work, and it builds confidence. And so even if they don't win, what they've learned along the way and the confidence that they've gained, and, even just like the ability to look into those intricate, tiny little pockets of your business, nobody ever regrets that.
on the exposure.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
and the more that you talk about it, the more you gain that confidence, and the more that you see what didn't go well and what did go well, and where you
Absolutely.
can leverage those things as well.
Absolutely.
You know, I think one of the neatest things about the drive have been the repeat people that have come back,
Yeah.
and you talk about, you know, learning those lessons,
Yes.
and they'll come the first year and they'll make a presentation, and maybe they won't be awarded the first year, but then they come back and they learn from that, and they gain confidence, and then I mean, we've had a couple of companies that have come back and won the second
Yeah.
year.
Well, and they've listened to the comments too. I think that that's also
Yes.
a really great opportunity within the exposure, but also the questions that you ask, like the things that they didn't go into or that they need more strength in. They have that another year to then prepare that and hopefully win the following.
And you have to have a certain humility to be willing to do that. You know, it would be very easy to not win the drive competition or not secure a loan and go in the bank and say, like, well, it didn't work out. You know, they don't know what they're talking about, and leave. But the people who come back and have demonstrated that they've learned lessons along the way and they're willing to accept advice and pivot if they think that that's actually the best thing for their business, that's important. To me, those are the business owners who are going to be successful.
And I think part of that is also the responsibility of, you talk about a situation with a bank. And I think every banker has been through this before and ultimately look back and say, you know, I wish I would have handled it better. But if a bank says no the right way, it can be a benefit. And then if the owner accepts it in the right way, it can be, you know, sometimes saying yes to a loan is the worst thing you can possibly do for somebody, because if you can see that they're getting themselves into a situation that's not going to be successful, then just because you made them happy and said yes today, it's not going to be happy in a year or two when their business is shutting down and they're deep in debt. But at the same time, the business owner, if oftentimes if you don't handle it right as a banker, then they come away feeling upset or angry at the bank. And I think the key thing is for the bank to make sure that they explain why and do a good job of responding quickly and efficiently, and don't leave somebody hanging there for a long time wondering whether they're going to get it or not. And then if the owner accepts it in that manner, and if they say, okay, this is what they're telling me, I'm going to come back and I'm going to do it, you know, but I'm going to address this issue and then I'm going to come back. I mean, that's the best of both worlds. Now you've got a customer for life, and you've got a great customer that's going to be successful.
Yeah. And that has to make you proud when people come back and you can see, okay, they're serious this time and they're going to do what they say they're going to do.
Absolutely.
What are some of your most proud moments in leading people through business development?
You know, some of the really fun things that I can remember that I've been through, actually, and I'll draw an analogy back to the CEO program. Some of these young kids have been just amazing in terms of kind of what they've accomplished in the class and then afterwards. And we had one young gentleman who wanted to do real estate investment, and which is a pretty ambitious, you know, his classmates are baking cookies and making candles,
right.
and he wants to be a real estate investor. But this young man had raised quite a bit of he'd saved quite a bit of money working through high school. We went through the class, we talked it through, I kind of mentored him, coached him and everything. And at the end of the day, he approached me at the end of his senior year and said, I'd like to come talk to you about a loan. And at the time he was 17 years old, which legally you can't borrow money until you can't sign legal documents till you're 18.
That's cool, though.
And he came to me, and he had a purchase agreement to buy a rental house, and he had the down payment, and he had all of his business plan in order, and everything was perfect. And so I said, when do you turn 18? And he told me, you know, when. I said, well, set your closing date for 2 days afterwards. And so we approved the loan. We went to the title company. It was 2 days after his 18th birthday. The title company told us that he was the youngest person to ever close a transaction, and they took his picture and put it on the wall.
Oh.
And he has been, and this was probably 5 years ago, and he has since, he's done a couple of properties, been very successful, branched out into a vending business, and
Wow.
but it's just fun. And we've had so many stories of real quick, I'll touch bases. We have a lot of people. I alluded to the fact that when we were getting started, a lot of small businesses were getting started in Kokomo. And we've had several. And I can remember one business in particular came to me, and they were working out of their garage, and they wanted a small $30,000 line of credit, something like that, which may not seem small, but it's small kind of relatively. And this company is now a $20 million a year sales company that employs 50, 100 people here in Kokomo. And if I mentioned the name, you'd all know the name, and it would be somebody, oh yeah, I know that company. But it's amazing, like our path, we grew from a tiny little bank to where we're at. And at the same time, a lot of our customers have had that same growth pattern. It's been really fun to watch.
That evolution of Kokomo, it feels like, I mean, I know there's a lot of buzz around Kokomo because we get media requests and things like that weekly, multiple times a week.
Sure.
But what have you seen Kokomo, how is it changing, and what are we looking forward to? What's next?
Well, I feel like, there's been periods of time, I would go back to say where we were 30 years ago. And we were an automotive town. We were a Chrysler town, and it was one industry. And we would ride the ups and downs of Chrysler. And I think at one point we had a local unemployment rate of 20-40%, something like that, because basically everything was shut down at Chrysler at that time. And so over the years, I think a focus of the chamber, a focus of Jacada, a lot of the local people have been, hey, we need to diversify. We need to grow other industries here in town. And I know that the battery plants and some of the things that have occurred over the last several years, the downtown convention center hotel, there's been a lot of things that have happened over the last 5 or 10 years to try to diversify Kokomo, to give Kokomo real staying power, to get away from just the single industry. And I think as we look ahead to the next 10, 20, 30 years, the changes that are happening in the world, I think, are going to affect Kokomo. Artificial intelligence, the move towards technology, the move towards remote working, industry's changing, and we'll always be a manufacturing town at heart. But I think that we have to be prepared to embrace the changes that are occurring in business and industry to continue. And then the other side of the coin is we don't just want people working here, we want people living here, right? So it's all the work that we do on quality of place to make Kokomo a town that we all want to spend our time in and raise our kids in. Those, I think, are very important to go along with it.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Bob, for your role at the bank and in our community. And we always say thank you to Community First Bank for allowing us the opportunity to highlight important people who make decisions and lead the community well. So thank you. It was a pleasure to have you.
It was fun being here.
Yeah,
thank
you for your leadership.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.